I was at my aunt's house for a casual family barbecue, grilled burgers, kids running around, adults laughing over old stories. Everything was normal, or at least it was until my mom decided to drop a bombshell in the middle of dinner like it was no big deal. She leaned back in her chair, took a slow sip of her drink, and with a smug little smirk, casually announced, "Oh, by the way, I took out a loan in my daughter's name. She can afford it." I froze. The whole table burst into laughter like she'd just cracked the joke of the century. My uncle shook his head, chuckling, "Damn, you really got her, huh?" My aunt, still chewing on potato salad, smiled and said, "Well, she does have a good job." Like it was nothing. Like my own mother hadn't just admitted to stealing my identity in front of the entire family. At first I thought maybe, just maybe, I had misheard her. That somehow, my brain had short-circuited and misinterpreted whatever nonsense she had just said. So I stared at her, trying to process, and asked, "What?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "It's just a small loan. Nothing to freak out about." My pulse pounded in my ears. My mom had done a lot of messed up things in the past, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, throwing me under the bus whenever it benefited her. But this was a whole new level of insanity. "How?" My voice barely came out. My mom shrugged. "I know you're social. You never check your credit anyway. You'll be fine." The casual way she said it, like she had borrowed my shampoo instead of stealing tens of thousands of dollars, made my stomach churn. My hands clenched under the table, nails digging into my palm. I wanted to scream. To flip the damn table over and ask her how the hell she thought this was okay. Then my phone buzzed. Normally, I wouldn't answer an unknown number, especially not in the middle of a family gathering. But something in my gut told me to pick up. "Hello?" A professional-sounding woman responded. "Hi, is this my name? I'm Samantha from bank name, calling regarding the personal loan you recently opened. We just need to confirm a few details before finalizing the transaction." My blood ran cold. My grip tightened around the phone. "What loan?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. Pause. "Ma'am, are you saying you did not apply for a personal loan with us?" "No," I said, my voice shaking now. "I did not." Silence. Then Samantha said something that made the room feel 10 degrees colder. "Ma'am, if you did not authorize this loan, then this is a case of identity theft and fraud." I looked up slowly, my mom's face coming into focus. That smug little smirk she had been wearing just seconds ago was gone. The laughter around the table had stopped. The family members who had just been joking about my financial ruin were suddenly staring, wide-eyed, forks frozen midair. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. "Samantha," I said, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me, "how much is this loan for?" There was a short pause before she dropped a number that nearly knocked the air out of my lungs. $30,000. The backyard was dead silent. "When was this taken out?" I asked. Samantha hesitated before replying. "Last month. We sent paperwork to the address on file, but we never received a response. We also attempted to contact you before finalizing the funds." And suddenly everything made sense. The weird letters that had gone missing. The calls I had been ignoring from unknown numbers. My mother had intercepted everything. I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper. "You stole $30,000 from me?" She rolled her eyes again like I was being unreasonable. "Oh, stop being so dramatic." Slammed her drink down on the table, looking around like she expected backup. "It's not like I took out a mortgage in your name. It's just a little loan. You make more than enough to cover it." My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her understand how badly she had just ruined everything. "This is fraud," I said through gritted teeth. "This is a literal crime." "Oh, please," she huffed. "After everything I've done for you? I gave birth to you, I fed you, I clothed you, and now you're mad because I borrowed a little money?" I felt like I was going to be sick. She wasn't just stealing from me, she actually believed she was entitled to my money. For the first time in my life, I saw her for exactly who she was. And I knew without a doubt that I couldn't let her get away with it. I lifted my phone back to my ear, voice like ice. Samantha, I said, I want to report this as fraud. Right now. The second the words left my mouth, my mother's entire expression changed. That smug confidence crumbled into pure, unfiltered panic. Wait. She started, but I wasn't listening anymore. Because in that moment she knew. She knew she was screwed. And I was just getting started. The backyard was completely silent. My mother, who had just been laughing like this was some kind of joke, was now frozen in place. Her grip tightened around her drink, her face pale. Samantha, I repeated, keeping my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me, I want to report this as fraud. No, wait. My mother shot up from her chair, eyes wide, her voice turning shrill. You don't need to do that. We can fix this as a family. I ignored her. Yes, I understand, I said into the phone, pacing toward the edge of the yard. What do I need to do next? Samantha's voice remained professional, but there was an edge of concern. We'll need to put an immediate hold on your credit to prevent any further transactions. I also recommend filing a police report as soon as possible. Police report. The words hit my mother like a slap. You wouldn't, she whispered. I turned to face her, finally letting all the disgust show on my face. You stole $30,000 from me, I said coldly. That's a felony, Mom. What the hell did you think was going to happen? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. You need to understand, she finally managed, her voice shaking. I had no choice. I let out a sharp laugh. No choice? You could have asked me. You could have figured out literally anything else instead of stealing from your own daughter. I was going to pay it back. I scoffed. With what? You don't even have a job. She flinched like I had hit her. The rest of the family was completely silent, watching the meltdown unfold. Look, she said, switching tactics, her voice suddenly softer, almost pleading. You know how hard things have been for me. The rent, the bills, I just needed a little help. I gritted my teeth, rage bubbling under my skin. Then why didn't you just ask? She hesitated, her gaze flickering. Because she knew I would have said no. And that's when I knew she never intended to pay it back. She had never even considered it. For the first time in my life, I truly saw her for what she was. A thief, a liar, a manipulator. And she thought she could get away with it. I took a deep breath, gripping my phone tighter. Samantha, I said into the receiver, I'll file the police report today. That's when my mother lost it. My mother lunged toward me, gripping my arm with a strength I didn't expect. Her nails dug into my skin as she hissed through clenched teeth. You're not going to the police. I yanked my arm free. Watch me. She was breathing hard now, her entire body trembling, not with fear but with pure, unfiltered rage. You don't understand what you're doing, she snapped, her voice dangerously low. I tilted my head. Oh, I think I do. Her hands balled into fists. Do you have any idea how this will make me look? What people will say? You're going to ruin my life over this? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Mom. You ruined your own life the second you forged my signature and took out a loan in my name. Behind us, the family was still completely silent. My uncle, who had been laughing just minutes ago, now looked deeply uncomfortable, like he had just realized that this wasn't funny anymore. My aunt, who had chuckled over her potato salad, was staring at her lap, suddenly finding her plate very interesting. But I wasn't letting them off the hook either. I turned to face them, my voice sharp. And all of you, I said, my eyes scanning the table, you knew, didn't you? Nobody spoke. I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. You sat here and laughed because this is normal to you. Because she's probably been pulling crap like this for years, hasn't she? My mom's head snapped up. Stop it, she seethed. I ignored her. Tell me, I continued, looking around, how many of you has she screwed over? Because I highly doubt I'm the first. Still nobody spoke. And that silence? That told me everything I needed to know. My mom saw the shift, saw that she was losing control of the narrative, and immediately went for her favorite weapon, guilt. I'm your mother, she said, her voice shaking, eyes glassy. Fake tears. I'd seen it 1,000,000 times before. I gave you everything. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay me. She was playing to the audience now, trying to make me look like the villain. But this time I wasn't falling for it. I crossed my arms. Let me ask you something, Mom, I said, voice level. If I had done this to you, if I had stolen your identity, opened credit cards in your name, taken out a $30,000 loan, what would you have done? Silence. She knew exactly what she would have done. She would have called the police immediately. She would have dragged me through hell. But because she did it, she thought she deserved a free pass. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice just enough for only her to hear. Here's the difference between us, Mom. I wouldn't have done this to you in the first place. Her face twisted. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes, because she realized she had finally pushed too far. I turned back to my phone. Samantha, said, my voice unwavering. Let's proceed with the fraud claim. And just like that, everything changed. The moment those words left my mouth, my mother snapped. Her entire demeanor shifted in an instant. Gone was the fake sadness, the forced guilt, the trembling voice. Now her eyes burned with sheer rage, her lips curling into a snarl as she stepped closer. You ungrateful little. Before she could finish, I held up a hand, cutting her off. Don't, I said sharply. Don't even try it. She stopped, nostrils flaring, seething with frustration because for the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. I turned back to my phone. Samantha, I said, voice steady, what's the next step? Samantha, still on the line, responded immediately. First, we'll need to file an official fraud report with the police. Then we'll begin the process of reversing the loan and investigating other fraudulent accounts in your name. My mom went pale. Wait, she blurted out, her voice cracking. We don't need to get the police involved. This is just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I cut in, raising an eyebrow. You took out a $30,000 loan in my name, maxed out credit cards I didn't even know existed, and now my credit is trashed. What exactly am I misunderstanding? She swallowed hard. I was going to fix it. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. With what money, Mom? You're broke. She flinched. The silence from the rest of my family was deafening. My aunts and uncles, who had been so quick to laugh at my expense minutes ago, now sat stiffly, eyes darting anywhere but at me. My uncle coughed awkwardly. My cousin bit his lip. Because now they knew. This wasn't a joke. This was a crime. And I wasn't playing along anymore. My mother, desperate, tried again. Switching tactics. You wouldn't do this to your own mother? She whispered, taking a step closer. I'm family. We're blood. I shook my head. Blood doesn't excuse theft. She flinched again, her breath hitching. And that's when I saw it. The moment she realized she had lost. She had spent her whole life manipulating people, twisting the truth, making herself the victim. But now it wasn't working. Because I wasn't giving her an inch. I turned back to my phone. Samantha, please proceed. And then? My mother completely lost it. My mother's entire body tensed. Her face twisted into something ugly, her hands trembling at her sides. And then she snapped. You selfish, ungrateful brat, she screamed, stepping toward me like she actually thought she could intimidate me into backing down. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I stared at her, completely unfazed. You mean after everything you've stolen from me? Her breath hitched, but she didn't stop. I raised you. I put a roof over your head. You owe me. I scoffed, shaking my head. I was 16 when you started charging me rent. I was 18 when you kicked me out. So tell me, Mom, what exactly do I owe you for? She stammered, but before she could come up with another excuse, I took another step forward. You stole my identity. My voice was eerily calm, but the rage boiling inside me was undeniable. You maxed out credit cards in my name. You took out loans, plural by the way, and completely destroyed my credit. And you still have the audacity to act like you're the victim? She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I was overreacting. Like she still thought she could talk her way out of this. Oh, come on, she muttered, crossing her arms. It's not like you were even using your credit score. That was it. I laughed. I actually laughed because the sheer insanity of what she just said was unreal. That's your defense? I asked, shaking my head. You wrecked my financial future because you assumed I wouldn't notice? Her expression faltered just a little, and that's when I went in for the kill. Tell me something, Mom, I said, tilting my head. Was it just the loan? Or are there more accounts I don't know about? She froze. And that's when I knew. Oh my God, I whispered, taking a step back. There's more, isn't there? She licked her lips, glancing around, realizing too late that she had trapped herself. I took out my phone. If I had only caught one fraud attempt by sheer accident, how many more were still out there? Hello? I said into the receiver as soon as the bank picked up. I need to check for any fraudulent accounts under my name. My mother lunged. She actually tried to snatch my phone out of my hands. But I was faster. I jerked away, and before she could try again, my uncle, the same one who had laughed at her joke earlier, grabbed her arm. Enough, he muttered, his face pale. She struggled against him. You don't understand. No, he cut her off, his voice cold. You don't understand. This is fraud. This is illegal. You're lucky she's just reporting it to the bank and not the police. Her face drained of all color, because she had just realized something. I wasn't done yet. I turned back to my phone. Yes, I'd like to dispute any accounts that were opened in my name without my authorization. And just like that, the last of her control slipped through her fingers. I ended the call with the bank, my hands still trembling, not with fear but with rage. My mother had just tried to steal my phone out of my hands to stop me from exposing her fraud. She wasn't sorry. She was just scared of getting caught. I turned to face her, staring her down with a cold, calculated calmness that I knew would terrify her more than yelling ever could. You opened more accounts in my name, didn't you? I said. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. She stammered. How many, Mom? My voice was sharp, demanding. I wasn't playing her games anymore. Her hands clenched into fists. It doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't, I snapped. You're not just some broke parent asking for help. You stole my identity and ruined my credit. You committed a crime. She flinched at the word, crime. And suddenly, the reality of the situation was sinking in for everyone. My aunts and uncles, who had been too busy laughing at her little joke earlier, now looked deeply uncomfortable. My cousins, who had once found the whole thing amusing, now sat stiff and silent, as if realizing they had just witnessed something serious. My uncle, **, the same one who had joked about me getting gotten by my own mother, **, was rubbing his temples, his jaw tight. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Fraud? My aunt whispered, looking back and forth between us. She really, yes, I said, my voice cold and firm. She really did. And that's when my mother lost it. You are not going to ruin my life over this, she shrieked, stepping forward, her face twisted with panic and rage. But I just stood my ground. You ruined your own damn life. She sucked in a sharp breath, her face draining of color as if the truth had physically hit her. And then, she did the only thing she knew how to do. She tried to guilt-trip me. I did what I had to do, she hissed, her voice shaking. You think life is easy for me? You think I had a choice? You had a choice, I shot back. You could have asked me for help like a normal person. You could have looked for a job instead of leeching off me behind my back. But instead you stole. Her breath hitched. I could feel the shift in the air, the silent, unspoken realization settling over the family. She had no way out. The manipulations, the guilt, the fake sob stories, none of them were going to save her now. And then, I took it one step further. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. What is that? My mother snapped, her voice laced with panic. I held it up. Bank statements, loan agreements, credit card applications, all in my name. Her entire body stiffened. I had my credit report pulled before I got here, I said, watching her closely. I already knew something was off, and now I have proof. She took a step back, her face contorting with sheer desperation. You don't have to do this, she whispered. Oh, but I do, I said, my voice calm, cruel, and final. Because you're about to learn what real consequences feel like. And then, I dialed the police. The moment I hit call, my mother's entire face drained of color. "No," she screamed, lunging toward me like a wild animal. But before she could lay a finger on me, my uncle, the same one who had laughed earlier, grabbed her arm and yanked her back. "You lay a hand on her and I swear to God I'll call the cops myself," he snapped. And just like that, my mother froze, realizing that her usual tactics, her fake tears, her tantrums, her guilt trips, weren't going to save her this time. But I didn't stop. I pressed the phone to my ear. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my eyes locked on her as I spoke, my voice cold and steady. My name is OP's name, and I'd like to report identity theft and fraud. The entire backyard went dead silent. For the first time in my entire life, I watched my mother look truly, completely powerless. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She looked to my aunts, my uncles, even my cousins, but no one came to her rescue. No one was going to help her this time. And then, she did the most pathetic thing I had ever seen. She dropped to her knees. "Baby, please," she sobbed. "I'm your mother." I turned my back on her. "And I'm your daughter, not your bank account." The dispatcher's voice crackled in my ear. "Ma'am, can you confirm the amount stolen?" I inhaled sharply. "At least $30,000 that I know of. But I have reason to believe there's more." The second those words left my mouth, my mother let out a blood-curdling scream. "You're destroying me," she shrieked, her voice cracking. But I was already walking away. "Officers are on their way," the dispatcher said. "Thank you," I replied, hanging up. I turned back just in time to see my mother collapse into sobs, begging my family to help her. But one by one, they turned away. Even the uncle who had joked with her earlier. Even the aunt who had defended her. Nobody wanted to be associated with her anymore. Because this wasn't just some harmless little family squabble. This was serious. This was criminal. And when the police arrived 20 minutes later and started questioning me, I handed them every piece of evidence I had. The stolen accounts, the bank statements, the fraudulent applications. One of the officers nodded grimly. "This is solid evidence. We'll need to bring her in for questioning." My mother screamed in protest. "You can't do this to me. I'm her mother." The officer barely blinked. "And you stole from her." And just like that, they cuffed her. For the first time ever, my mother, the woman who had spent her entire life controlling and manipulating everyone around her, was being dragged away like the criminal she was. She turned back, her eyes wild with rage and desperation. "I'll ruin you for this," she howled. I just smirked. "You already ruined yourself." And then, I watched as they shoved her into the squad car and drove her away. The silence left behind was deafening. My mother had spent her whole life dodging consequences, talking her way out of every mess, manipulating her way back into people's good graces. But this time, there was no way out. I filed official fraud charges the next morning. The bank confirmed that multiple accounts were fraudulently opened in my name, and when they dug deeper, they found even more stolen money. Not just from me, but from other family members too. Apparently, my mother had been using my grandmother's identity as well before she passed away. Tens of thousands of dollars in fraudulent loans, fake accounts, even a failed attempt to refinance my grandmother's house. This wasn't just one mistake. This was a lifetime of financial crimes catching up to her all at once. And now, she was paying for it. The day after her arrest, I started getting calls. Aunt Maria, Uncle Jim, even a couple of cousins. All of them suddenly concerned. "Maybe you should drop the charges," Aunt Maria whispered. "She's still your mother." I laughed. "She wasn't my mother when she stole from me," I replied. "She wasn't my mother when she destroyed my credit." Silence. Then Uncle Jim sighed like I was the unreasonable one. "She'll go to jail for this, you know." I smirked. "Good." He hung up. But my favorite part? The next day, my mom's lawyer called. A public defender. Because guess what? My mother was so deep in debt she couldn't even afford a real lawyer. The man sounded exhausted. "We're hoping to reach a settlement," he began. "If you're willing to drop the charges." I cut him off immediately. "No," he sighed. "You don't even want to hear the offer?" "I don't care what the offer is," I replied, leaning back in my chair. "She ruined my credit. She stole from me. And now, she's facing the consequences." A long silence. Then, "She says she's sorry." I almost burst out laughing. "She's sorry?" I repeated. "She wasn't sorry when she was spending my money." The lawyer didn't argue. He knew. Everyone knew. This was open and shut. And then, got even better. Because a week later I got a call from a detective. "Ms. Opie's name," he said. "We've just uncovered something interesting." I raised an eyebrow. "What now?" He sighed. "Your mother took out a life insurance policy in your name." I froze. "What?" "She signed the documents 6 months ago," he continued, listing herself as the sole beneficiary. My blood ran cold. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that my mother took out a life insurance policy on me?" "Yep." Silence. Then I let out a low, bitter laugh. "Well," I said, "that settles it. She was never going to pay me back." The detective chuckled. "No. No, she wasn't." Stared at the ceiling for a long time after the call ended, trying to process what I had just heard. A life insurance policy. My own mother had taken one out on me, listing herself as the sole beneficiary. She wasn't just stealing my money, she was planning for the day when I wouldn't be around anymore. Whether she was expecting some tragic accident or hoping I'd just never find out, one thing was clear: she never intended to pay me back. This wasn't desperation. It wasn't a mistake. It was premeditated fraud. I exhaled slowly, gripping my phone like it might shatter in my hands. There was no coming back from this. She wasn't just a thief, she was a monster. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again and we expanded the case. Fraud. Identity theft. Financial abuse. And now insurance fraud. I signed off on every single charge, making it clear that I wanted the maximum legal consequences for everything she had done. No settlements. No second chances. And then I cut her off. Completely. I called the banks, making sure they flagged every fraudulent transaction under her name. I locked down every financial account I owned, changed every security question, and placed a permanent fraud alert on my credit. I even got a new phone number, ensuring that she would never be able to reach me again. And then I waited, because I knew what was coming next. The guilt tripping, the apologies, the desperate pleas for mercy. And sure enough, 3 days later, my aunt left me a voicemail. "She's really sorry, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with forced sympathy. "She wasn't thinking straight. She's your mother after all. Don't you think you're taking this a little too far?" I deleted it without responding. Then came my uncle, trying a different approach. "Look, I know she messed up," he said, "but sending your own mother to jail? That's harsh. If you drop the charges, maybe she can make it up to you." I blocked his number. Finally, the one I had been waiting for. My mother, calling from a restricted line. I let it go to voicemail, and when I listened, my stomach turned at the sound of her voice. "You ungrateful little brat," she spat, her voice venomous. "I gave you everything. I raised you, fed you, clothed you. And this is how you repay me? You're ruining my life over a little money? You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've done. Mark my words, you will regret this." I smiled as I hit block. Regret? No, not even for a second. Her trial came faster than I expected. She was charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. When they laid out the evidence, the loans, the credit cards, the insurance policy, there was nothing she could say. No way to spin the story. No one left to defend her. She sat there, pale and silent, as the judge handed down the sentence. 18 months in prison. It wasn't as long as I'd hoped, but it was long enough. Long enough for her to lose everything. She lost the house when she couldn't make the payments. Lost her car when they repossessed it. Lost whatever friends she had left when they realized she wasn't the charming woman she pretended to be. And when she got out, she had nowhere to go. She tried to reach out, of course. Letters, emails, even messages through distant family members. Every single one was ignored. Because as far as I was concerned, she was dead to me. I built my life back up. It took time, years in fact, to fix my credit, to recover financially, to rebuild the trust in myself that she had stolen. But I did it. And now she's nothing more than a bad memory. A lesson learned. Some people say family is forever. I say family is earned. And she lost that right a long, long time ago. It's been 5 years since that day in court. 5 years since I watched my mother sit there, stone-faced, as the judge read her sentence. 5 years since I walked out of that courtroom, breathing freely for the first time in my life, knowing she would never touch a single part of my future again. She got out after serving her time, but by then it was too late. She had nothing left. No home, no savings, no reputation. The family that once defended her had long since abandoned her, realizing that they were only useful to her as long as they had something to give. She tried to stay with my aunt, but that lasted less than a week before she was kicked out. Apparently, stealing from your own child doesn't exactly make you a desirable house guest. Last I heard, she was living in a shelter, working some dead-end job, barely scraping by. And I built a life she never could have imagined. My credit is finally repaired. My finances are stronger than ever. I own my own home, debt-free, with a future that belongs to me and me alone. I got married last year to someone who actually understands the meaning of love, something my mother never did. I have real friends, people who support me, people who don't see me as a walking bank account. And the best part? I never have to worry about her ever again. She tried to reach out once, about a year after she got out. A letter, mailed from whatever rundown apartment she was barely affording. I don't know what I expected. An apology maybe? Some kind of half-hearted attempt to make amends? But no, it was more of the same. She blamed me for everything. For the debt, for the prison time, for the fact that nobody wanted anything to do with her anymore. She called me selfish. Said she was my mother, that I owed her, that I had no right to just throw her away like this. That I should be ashamed of myself. I burned the letter. And just like that, she was gone. People always ask me, do you ever regret it? Cutting her off? Letting her go to jail? Watching her lose everything? And my answer is always the same. Not for a second. Because here's the thing about people like her. They don't change. They don't learn. They don't wake up one day and suddenly become decent human beings. They just find new ways to use, manipulate, and destroy. And I refuse to be her victim ever again. So no, I don't regret it. If anything, I wish I had done it sooner. She made her choice the moment she decided that my life was hers to take. That my future belonged to her. That I was nothing more than a tool for her survival. She lost. And I won. And that is the best revenge of all.